Meanwhile, I've been saying for years that Israel is going to lose the Democratic Party, and it is. And they, I think, have come to this realization. They don't seem to care about it. What's fascinating is that now critique of Israel is becoming more and more mainstreamed and is becoming less and less taboo. Peter Beinart, who 15, 20 years ago was in a radically different place when it came to Israel. Part of it is, I think part of it, frankly, is also the past 15 years in terms of what has happened in Israel, 15 to 20 years, has been dramatic. In many ways, since Rabin was assassinated, I think there has been sort of a growing awareness in the center left in this country that Israel has gone further and further off the rails in terms of its politics and its leadership, and in terms of where the population is heading. And Peter Beinart, who was a big Iraq war advocate and then subsequently made what I think is probably the most legitimate of all the mea culpas, and then actively working towards fixing what he missed. It wasn't just like, I got that one wrong, but I'm going back at it. It wasn't like a Larry Kudlow, like, okay, yeah. Nobody bats 1,000. He actively dedicated himself to understanding why he got it wrong and what he didn't, what his predispositions towards that region were. And here he is on CNN in what I think is probably one of the most dramatic arguments about the injustice that's happening in Israel that you could see on cable news. This is a big deal to see on cable news. Israel critiqued in this manner by someone who is considered mainstream by cable news. They're not bringing somebody on, because they're wearing a funny hat at a rave party, and protesting on stilts.
That he's talking about is called MIFTA, which is an organization that in the past has published articles on their website using phrases like blood libel, which in the past on their website has praised Palestinians who've carried out attacks against Israelis. And this was the organization that was involved with the planning of that trip. Now, you heard Ilhan Omar refer to that obliquely in her statement, but is that a type of organization that you should be connected with as a U.S. member of Congress?
Palestinians don't have to be saints in order to deserve the basic rights that all of us take for granted, right? MIFTA has said things that I disagree with. They made an anti-Semitic statement that they apologized for. The point is, when you go there, I say this as an American Jew. My children go to Jewish day school. I lead services in an Orthodox synagogue. Judaism is the center of my life. The first time I went to spend time with Palestinians in the West Bank, it was a shattering experience. The only thing I could imagine would be similar for American would be going to visit the Jim Crow South. When you see people living under the control of the state with no rights, they cannot become citizens. They cannot vote for the state that controls their lives. They do not have free movement. They need a pass to move from city to city. They live under a military legal system. The consequences are more brutal than we can imagine sitting here. So, do I agree with MIFTA? Of course not. I had a close friend who was killed in a suicide bombing. But Palestinians don't. You could have made the same argument if you went to visit SNCC and said, oh, they were connected with communists. Some of their people have made anti-white statements. The point is, what Ilhan Omar said is the most important point. People need to go and see for themselves. I've never seen anyone who's gone and seen for themselves and not been transformed by the experience.
That, I think, is true and apolitical, that it is worth going to Israel, worth going to the West Bank so you can see for yourself. You get a real sense of the situation on the ground. Rich Lowry, on the subject of MIFTA, the other side of that is that there has been a congressional trip that was led by MIFTA before, and the Israeli government let it happen. Now, I know it was before the actual law was passed, but they didn't need a law to keep people out if they didn't want to, but they allowed it to happen before. Now they're not, and claiming it's because of this organization.
Yeah, well, obviously the proximate cause here was the Trump tweet, which highlighted this and made it a major issue. But there is a law that allows Israel to ban foreigners who support the BDS movement, to isolate and delegitimize Israel. It's been not applied against members of Congress before. It's been applied against French politicians, against EU politicians. But these are strong supporters of the BDS movement. They are not honest brokers. We wouldn't afford a white nationalist organization the leeway that Peter is giving this organization. Oh, they're not saints. This is an anti-Semitic group that supported terrorism, supports blowing up innocent civilians and children. And no matter what you think of the dispute between the Palestinians and Israel, that is an illegitimate tactic that no one should associate with advocates of.
Want a quick response to that, Peter? Then I want to bring it.
Sure. Hannah Shrawi is actually very well known as a nonviolent activist, been a critic of the Palestinian Authority, one of the most important Palestinian feminists. There are many Palestinians who believe that Palestinians have the right to use violence because of the daily violent oppression they feel. I disagree with them. I believe in only nonviolent protest. But the point is, every time any Palestinian leader or any Palestinian organization tries to expose what happens, this is exactly what happens. People try to discredit them because they don't want to talk about the real issue. The real issue is an absolutely indefensible denial of basic human rights.
What's that have to do with supporting terrorism? I mean, no one has any problem with harshly criticizing Israel. That's fine. But you don't support blowing up innocent people. That's just a bottom line. Something we all should agree on.
The purpose behind focusing on this is to try to distract attention from the reality on the ground, which is funded by American tax dollars. Our tax dollars blow up the homes of people who cannot get permits to build because they're non-citizens under military law.
Would this be your standard for a white nationalist organization? They say some racist things. They support some terrorism.
With all due respect,
that's okay.
You have not been there and seen this on the ground. I know Hanan Ashrawi. She is nothing close to a white nationalist. She is someone seeking freedom.
But then why does the organization publish things supporting terrorism?
Rich, I disagree with violent resistance.
No, but why do they?
It is because a lot of Palestinians believe that because they are subject to daily violence of a system which denies them basic rights, they have the right to respond violently. I disagree with them. But an African American who supported violence against the United States under slavery or Jim Crow, that did not excuse their denial of basic rights because I disagree with the tactic they were using to resist it.
I mean, it's fine to harshly criticize Israel and the occupation.
Pause
but I don't think anyone's...
Is that true? Is it true that it's fine to harshly criticize Israel and the occupation? Isn't this entire... I mean, look at the chyron underneath. I mean, this whole news segment is a function of why it's wrong for Omar Hillan and Talib and anybody else for criticizing Israel in this way. I mean, the whole premise of why this is on the news is not because of MIFTA. Nobody watching this knows who MIFTA is. The whole premise is like they're criticizing Israel. Completely disingenuous, but go.
Using to resist it.
I mean, it's fine to harshly criticize Israel and the occupation, but I don't think anyone's be associated with a group that supports terrorism. And this isn't black or white. I mean, they publish this stuff. No one's forcing them to publish
years
this
ago,
stuff.
there were certain statements on their website. Hanan Ashrawi has devoted her life as a nonviolent activist to opposing an oppression which none of us which does not accord with the values that any of us believe in as Americans.
So she doesn't control her own organization and what it publishes?
Rich, why don't you try spending a little bit of time focusing on the fact that almost $4 billion of U.S. aid is used to put children in detention.
You're the one distracting from the issue. I'm asking
No, this is the issue. You're distracting from the issue because National Review National Review defended apartheid, and just as you defended segregation, you now defend Israel's oppression of Palestinian basic rights. It's a tradition for you guys.
Look, and if an organization supports terrorism,
you finally forced Peter Beinart to be uncivil and correct.
Yeah.
No, that's so important. That's all it is. And every argument they have is whataboutism. It's also just the fundamental dishonesty that you pointed out, that of course you're not allowed to talk about the Israeli occupation. And now it's just all of a sudden seamlessly moved into this lie about this organization And also, frankly, like the distinction between we have to have some universal standards. You have to say that there are certain actions that states or groups should not undertake, period, or else we just don't have any ground for anything. But as a broader proposition, the notion that Rich Lowry has anything to say
Right.
about how the Palestinians conduct their struggle violently, non-violently, or otherwise, I mean, that, and they've been saying this for years, by the way.
Well, that's the point.
This
Yeah,
is so
let's go begin.
demented.
Of
now-
U.S. aid is used to put children
You're
in
the one,
detention.
you're the one
Great-
distracting from the issue. I'm
No,
asking
no,
you,
this
I'm
is
asking
the
you
issue.
simple
You're
questions,
distracting
and
from
you're
the issue because National Review,
you're
just,
shouting and
just
interrupting.
as National Review defended apartheid, and just as you defended segregation, you now defend Israel's oppression of Palestinian basic rights. It's a tradition for you guys.
Look, and if an organization supports terrorism, that organization should be beyond the pale.
And when
I don't see
Palestinians
why that's
protest
even an argument.
nonviolently, when they protest nonviolently, right, you discredit them as well.
So you're saying that, in some sense, justifies terrorism?
Of
Because
course it
they're
doesn't
not getting
justify
what they
I've
want
said again and again
nonviolently?
I disagree with terrorism. What I'm saying is you're trying to distract from the real issue. The real issue is American complicity in the denial of basic Palestine.
All right, we're going to leave
What's
this,
the
guys.
content of your opposition mean?
We're gonna
if you
leave
won't
this
condemn
there.
this organization.
Rich, please go there yourself.
We're going to leave that.
Of course you won't.
It's also just, I mean, of course they won't. And of course, like, this will keep going. Like, this is all they've got. There's
Right.
nothing else.
This is look. This plays into everything the Republicans want to run on, because they get the angry brown ladies, they get the evangelicals, they pump the prime for some right wing dollars.
But
goes
this is
on
also
and
why
on.
you really can't. I mean, I'm not just so critical of the equivocating from Warren because she's not my candidate. It's because really anybody in any type of broad claim of center-left politics that still calls, that still says something like, oh, well, when Israel doesn't give them visas, they're undermining their image as a tolerant democracy. It is offensive.
Like the framing, as
human
opposed to like
beings are
this
in
is-
apartheid.
This is indicative
Children
of
get their
a
bones
problem that
broken
they have in
by
their society.
soldiers.
Right.
This is their governance.
Right.
And it should be offensive to every Jewish person in America that any Jews are supporting this, or anyone is supporting the Trump administration somehow in our name, when, most of their attention is on brown people right now and putting them in camps. Once they achieve that, they're absolutely going to try to do it to us.
The Jews.
Yeah.
I mean, we become a lot less relevant, particularly once Jesus comes back. Like
There's only one
two-thirds
place
are just
in the
completely
world
chucked.
that fascism works for Jews. Israel.
There you go.